Hello and welcome to our webinar on SOX Compliance Audit Preparation and Checklist. Well, we had already, thank you again for everyone for turning up for this webinar on SOX Compliance. And I owe it actually, I literally owe it to my audience. And we've been doing it, as you know, for more than 5 years now. And sometime back, we had done a webinar on SOX compliance for 2022. And in that webinar, I had promised that we'll have a follow-up webinar to get into more compliance issues, or not issues, requirements for SOX compliance. And it had slipped my mind. And our audience are so gracious of them, and I'm so thankful that they reminded me that you need to do that. All right, so here I am. So thank you again. It's becoming one big happy family, right? So looking out for each other. So thanks again. And as we start, these are the topics that we'll be covering during the webinar. You've already got a detailed listing of this, so it doesn't make sense for me to read it again. And as we go ahead, if you have any queries, you can point it out. And again, you gain CPA points, 1 CPA point for attending the webinar, but you have to be there till the end. So in case you're not there till the end, what will happen is that in case you get a request to verify whether you have attended, my team will be checking whether you are there till the end. In case you have bailed out in the middle, then we'll not be able to reply in the affirmative. So I hope you're getting what I'm saying. So yeah, and there are these free informative resources on our YouTube channel. We have literally hundreds of videos, and do subscribe and click on the bell icon as you go ahead. And here is the link in case you want to check out our site. Lots of videos on literally everything in the compliance domain: PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, SOC 1, SOC 2, ethical hackings, MASTR, MNCA, ECC, SOX, you name it, we have it. And I have posted the link. And all right, there's Megan. She's asked a question. She wants a link for my last webinar on SOX compliance. All right, give me a moment. It's there on our channel, but I'll post it anyway since you asked. One sec. And yeah, here is the link for the first video that I've put in the chat now. That is a video of the first webinar that we've done on SOX. All right, so do go for it. This will help you because this is the second video as a follow-up of the first. So in case you have missed the first one, do go. You got a YouTube channel. Do subscribe and click on the bell icon. All right, as you go along, you've got the questions, and Megan got the point, and she posted her first query of the day. So if you are, so there are typically numerous queries that do coming up. So, but what you can do is that what I can promise you is that as you go ahead, I will be answering them. In case I do miss out because of time constraints, I will be writing to you directly. Secondly, is that in case you're watching this on a YouTube, so in that case, you can always leave it in the comment section, or you can write to us on askus@vistainfosec.com, and I will respond back to you. And that's me. Most of you know me, and looking at the audience, many of you have already attended our webinars earlier. I can see even a few of my clients over here. Yeah, so thank you for being there. So this is me, actually, Narendra Sahu. I've been in this industry for almost 30 years now, and I've spent the last 17 years for my company, Vista InfoSec. I'm myself a QSA, QPA, many things, actually, PCI, SSCLA, PCI, SSFA, CSAS, VRISC, many things I do. And my company is actually, my company is actually a vendor neutral organization. We don't sell any hardware, any software, so to say. Yes. My company doesn't sell any hardware, software, purely into consulting into consulting advisory and services only. And yeah, that's an international presence. You're there across the world in US, UK, Canada, Middle East, Singapore. We are there, and these are the services portfolio in compliance, governance, regulatory, privacy, technical assessments. Okay, I won't bore you with our company background. In case you're interested in knowing about us, go to our website, vistainfosec.com, and that's the certification services. We work across the domains. Uh, and these are a few of the clients who have worked with us, not all of them, but a few of them who are there. But we have been fortunate enough, blessed enough to work with many of them, more bigger companies also. Okay, and at the end of this webinar, there will be a brief survey participation request. Do drop in your valuable queries. Do drop in your comments. It could be critical, positive, negative, whatever. It always gives us a chance to improve or feel content that we did something worthwhile, right? So do drop in, and even if you have any queries, drop it in, and even feedback for the next webinar. That's how this webinar came into being, right? So do drop in, and I will get back to you on this. All right. So jumping right into the topic, this is like a brief, like a precursor to the last webinar. So it won't contain all the contents of the last webinar, but again, I suggest you that you do that. All right. So Sarbanes-Oxley, as a law, federal law of the United States of America, was enforced on July 30th, 2002. So any companies that are they're planning to enter the public market to the traditional IPO or a special SPAC, special process, special purpose acquisition company are required to comply with the Sarbanes-Oxley law. It is not something that almost everything that is there. All right, somebody's asked about this recording. Yes, this will be made online for you, but not immediately after 15 days only. All right, coming back. Now, this law is mandated by several reforms to enhance corporate responsibility and financial disclosures. So it is not meant just for, overall, so it's meant to bring additional accountability. And as a part of that accountability, even data security comes into place. So many, auditors even from PCOAB are coming under it, and they do these audits. So it is basically meant for ensuring that there is transparency and the internal controls are in place before you go public. So that was the whole base intention, that if you're going to think about it this way. um, if I'm planning to put my company on as an IPO, like an initial public offering, or go on the stock market, so and put my company as a public limited company, so what I'm doing, in essence, I'm selling part of the company, right, as equity to someone else, and they'll pay me some X amount for equity in the company. So this law was supposed is not was supposed is there to ensure that there is at least a basic benchmark in place, so that companies have some standing and some sort of an accountability before they can offer their company on the IPO segment, right? So this was for all US public company boards. So it expanded the requirements for everyone, public accounting firms for transparency, and even brought about a lot of responsibility for the auditor. So in case they misreport or mishandle or something, they'll be held responsible for their misadventures, right? So coming to the next thing, so what is basically a SOX audit? So okay, before that, of these people, of all of you who are there, how many of you are actually coming under SOX, or have you been through a SOX audit actually? We worked with various banks also. We worked with various multinationals also, mostly on the financial side, financial companies. So how many of you? We can just give a raise of hand. Don't worry. There'll be no marketing calls from our side. All right. So nobody is going to bother you. This is totally for the sake of me to understand whom of you. So maybe you can message me or something. And how many of you? The question is, how many of you have actually been through a SOX audit? All right. Okay. Not many. Yeah. But no. It's quite a few actually. Almost half the people who are there are coming under it. Okay. Great. So it's good to hear. So it is not just basically um, from the academic interest. Yeah, many are there from the academic interest, and nothing wrong with that. And even I learn all the time. So great. So there are some with academic interest in mind, which is good, and even for furthering your career, because this thing, most of the large multinationals are coming under SOX. If you're looking at moving in the compliance segment, SOX audit knowledge will be really very good. So you need to pay attention and ask me 20 questions. All right. So this audit is intended to verify the financial statements of the organization. So basically, from the financial, the internal control. So for ICFR, internal controls for financial reporting, parts of that is also included in a large area, not small parts. Large parts of ICFR are also covered. Incidentally, ICFR is also there, which is a driving force beyond in SOC one, not SOC two, in SOC one. So now the question that comes is, why are we doing this under uh, being an infosec company? What are we doing? Checking the financial setup of an organization statements, because we as a company, Vista InfoSec, we don't do financial audits. We basically do all this PCI, SOC 1, SOC 2, GDPR, HIPAA stuff. So what are we doing SOX, in SOX? Actually, even I used to wonder that when we started off, when we were contacted by a major bank to do it. And even I was wondering, SOX is basically finance, and why? Then once our team, we discussed with the team and we went through it. There is a major part of the internal control requirements is includes the IT assets, how you're managing IT, right? So how you're managing your internal controls, policies, procedures, everything for IT is also covered. Is covered. Majorly, it is that. Right. So, okay, quite a few people are messaging. Thank you so much. Really, I appreciate your involvement. Great. Thank you again for that, team. Really, it really means a lot to me that we are discussing this together and sharing information together. Thank you again. So, so that's where the SOX auditor, the IT cybersec companies, IT audit companies like us are called in for SOX audit, because there is a major reliance on the IT assets and the way IT assets are managed in the company. Now, okay, Dilshan, okay, a good query. Is it about cyber security SOX? Yeah, security is a component under SOX. Okay, it is more about how IT management happens. So when we're doing SOX, one of the benchmarks that we use, or the framework that we use for doing the TOD TOE, is the COSO framework. And COSO framework is, as you everyone knows, even SOC 1, SOC 2 is based on the COSO framework. ISO 27001 parts in the COSO framework. COSO framework is the mothership for any and all sorts of IT testing or IT assessments. That is where, even for doing a SOX audit, we refer to the COSO framework, right? So I really hope that helps. Please keep that in mind. All right. So when are they supposed? When is an? So these are all the queries that typically comes to us. So we made slides out of it to answer it. All right. So when is an organization expected to perform SOX audit? So we have to keep in mind that SOX, if you, I don't know how many of you really clicked or understood that date. This SOX came into being in 2002 at the height of various corporate scandals that had happened, even Enron and so many other scandals that had happened in the United States. So, uh, for more accountability from the public companies and the respective accounting firms, as you might remember, if my memory serves me right, it was immediately at that time itself one of the big five. That time it was a big five, then it became the big four. So that led to the dissolution of one of the major big five companies also. And so organizations, you are supposed to be like any sort of audit, like a HIPAA, GDPR, SOC 1, SOC 2, whatever. You're supposed to be doing SOX audit once a year. And again, depends on different applicable sections. Now, if you want to get into applicable sections more in detail, I'll be touching over here, but you have to see the first webinar that we have done on SOX. Now, broadly speaking, SOX is applicable to any public company. Well, you can do it as a part of a private company too, but it's not really a mandate for you. But if you're a public company, it's a mandate. So many a time, okay, we have done this for companies where they are themselves not public limited companies. But what has happened is that They are major service providers or channel partners to a public company which is coming under SOX. So the performance of that large organization which is coming under a SOX is dependent on the small service provider or product provider also, or his channel partner also. So what happens is that that large company then forces the small company to do SOX. I hope you're getting all right. So that's where the compliance obligation or third party's insistence, that is, as I just told you, large company, small company. And then the due diligence for prospective investors. So if I'm looking at selling my company, or if I'm looking at doing an IPO, this is a great way to ensure give due confidence to my investors that I have got things in place. And then again, if you're a public company, and or if you're going in for an IPO or something, you need to have uh, SOX in place. That's where the fourth point of regulatory or state requirement comes into place. Yeah, what am I doing? One sec. Yeah. So what really happens during a SOC to a SOX audit? So during this, they are supposed to be, as I mentioned earlier, SOX is more of is an annual audit that happens, and then the audit report goes to all the shareholders, stakeholders, or the prospective clients or vendors, whatever be the case. And this has to be done by external independent auditors, and they have to be separate from other audits to avoid conflict of interest. So you cannot have a SOX auditor who is also doing two, three other audits for you. So this has to be totally that that person is doing only SOX, and then that person or that organization is also ensuring that you have done other audits and done that in a diligent manner. So this is to be done with a very high level of seriousness. The reason being, there is jail time, right? So there is jail time involved in case there is a problem. So there is a nice question that has been posted. That in the beginning you said it is a mandate for US public company. So is it not a mandate in India? No, absolutely, it's not a mandate in India. It is a US legislation, as I said earlier. It is a federal law by the United States of America, right? For any company that's looking at getting listed. So that is there or already listed. So I hope that that helps. So then the question that arises is, why is companies in India doing it? We have a few clients in India doing it, banks in India doing it. So the point is that if you've got international exposure, or if you've got international clients, so then you need to give who are coming under SOX. So, and if they have a heavy dependency on you, your performance or disperformance will definitely affect them. So to ensure that everything is in place, you need to have a SOX audit done appropriately, right? And so if the overall security system is weak, then you can even fail the SOX audit. So that's also a possibility. So it is not really like in a SOC 1 or a SOC 2, that's more like an attestation. So nobody can fail really a SOC 1 or a SOC 2 audit, because I can release the audit report with my comments on it, right? But you can't do that in a SOX audit. In a SOX audit, you can actually fail a SOX audit. All right, so don't confuse it with that. It's not an attestation like a SOC 1 or a SOC 2 where I'm giving my opinion on the how strong are the cyber security controls or information security controls in an organization. Here you can actually fail it, right? And again, we'll come to the dependency on we need to check on the dependency on SOX and sorry. One sec. Let me move ahead. There are too many queries coming in. I'm reading them. One sec. Okay. Uh, okay. Yeah. So what happens? So then the management in a SOX audit, like a typical audit, again the auditor meets the management of the organization for the scope and the extent, which is again has to be finalized in advance. But then the auditor will always do the due diligence to check whether the management is aware of what's going on. Then again, the auditor will take a close look at the company's financials, compare with the prior financials, audits, the internal audits that's already happening in place, and whether the financial statements are in order and accurate or not. So that's where even the internal audit controls need to need to be very well clarified. So then the auditor is a part of, there are two parts. I've not written that over here, but understand it. There are two parts in a SOX audit, like typically almost every other audit. There is a TOD and a TOE. There's a test of design and the test of effectiveness. So in the test of design, the auditor will check on how the policies, procedures, the control framework has been designed. And in the test of effectiveness, they look at the auditor will look at how well the how well the audits have been, how well the controls have been implemented in the organization. So control effectiveness is the second part. And one of the steps in that is interviewing the people who are responsible for the day-to-day management of SOX compliance or form a part of the operational team. So it is all about reviewing and verifying areas that needs to be addressed. And if there are some discrepancies, then the auditor can definitely highlight and with some hardcore financial data or internal security controls and processes that needs to be made more firm or more rigid or more strengthened, right? Strengthened. So okay, 1 minute. Okay. The next thing is hiring an independent auditor. What happens? So you start off with hiring an independent auditor, define the scope of the auditor, identify which of the SOX controls you'll be implementing. So we'll get into that also. What are the different levels of SOX controls? And then performing a fraud assessment, testing the key controls, analyzing the deficiencies in SOX, and then finally delivering the management report on controls. And before that, analyzing the deficiencies, if there are deficiencies, the auditor at its own discretion might give you some time to fix it. It could be 1 2 days or a couple of weeks or something. That depends on the auditor and the seriousness of the findings which is there. So these are the SOX audit controls which is there. What does the SOX audit for internal controls include? So it includes the inspection and verification of the following requirements. So there is the access, that is secure all digital and electronic access points from where the data can be accessed. So now look at it this way. It was, this is where the point I would like to make is that many people feel it is purely a financial based audit, but there is huge reliance on technology, right? A huge reliance on the internal assets, IT assets especially. So then, first of all, okay, secure all the digital and electronic access points. The data part is checked. The change management, the most important pillar in any IT management system. And then the security, demonstrate resilience to data breach attempts. And the next thing, key sections which are covered. It covers, the SOX audit encompasses many different sections with corporate responsibility in managing the data within the organization. So the entire act is just not very big. It is just a 66 page read, just a 66 page read. And one sec, there's a nice question which is, one sec, okay, let me finish the slide, then I'll take the questions. Okay, the entire act is only 66 pages. Not very long, but I cannot cover all the 66 pages. So in the I'll cover some over here, and then maybe in the next not maybe in my next talks audit we'll get more into each control area discussion, right? So the first step is to comprehend which sections of the act has implications for data reporting, management, and security. So okay, Alan has asked a good question. How can we give confidence to interviewer that we can perform SOX audit assessments? Wow, no prior experience in SOX audit, having experience as ISMS. What additional? Okay, so Alan, okay, let me read the question. How can we give confidence to interviewer that we can perform SOX audits? No prior experience in SOX audits, but having experience in ISMS, PCI DSS. What additional information is expected? Okay, Alan, that's a great question. So basically, mm, mm, mm. if you you have to understand firstly that this is not a cyber security or just a pure information security audit. So whatever standards you've written of ISMS, PCI DSS is more from the information and cyber security perspective. This is more, I don't know whether you've read a SOC 2 control framework or a SOC 1 or something, but this is more from the COSO framework, which is more about IT management, in which cyber security or information security is a part of it. Right. So if you are able, so you are supposed to be doing internal audits before the auditor comes. So I guess you're talking from that perspective. So if you're doing the internal audit, of course you can do it. But in that case, you have to show that you have a good background. So it could be that you have a good certification like a CISA or a CRISC, or you've done a CISSP and stuff that gives you the hold on understanding information security as a whole. If you've done your CISA, then overall how IT systems have to be audited, you have a supposedly have a good idea. Actually, I use the word supposedly because I have seen many CISAs also who have not much of an idea of what is even IT audits all about. So it basically depends on you being able to showcase to the auditor and that you have your experience ranging beyond data security. If you're banking only on data security, then you might fall a bit short. All right. So I hope you're getting what I'm saying. So as a company, like we do even ISO 20000. So ISO 20000 is from the IT service management. So I would say there is more parallel between IT, just like a example I'm giving. Okay, don't really quote me 100% on this. So there is a lot bigger parallel between ISO say 20000 or ITIL and the requirement of SOX than ISO 27001 and SOX. Right. So I hope that is you're getting that point. Okay, going ahead. There's still a lot to cover, so I'll take this a bit fast. So the key sections covered. So here are a few sections that is covered. So 302, this is the corporate responsibility for financial reporting. This is where some CEOs also got arrested because they were this corporate responsibility. This basically falls on the senior management to ensure that their financial statements are not fudged. The right data is given to them. The IT auditor has not made a mistake and they have released the report to the right stakeholders. So this is corporate responsibility. You can't say that I was not aware what the CPA or this auditor wrote in his report. So that's where you know your your responsibility. So whether it's the CFO has to present or the CEO has to present it, it starts at that level, right? And section 401 of the SOX added disclosures of the to the public financial report. So if you're a public limited organization, then you have to disclose and make open to the general public at large your financial statements. That again has to be done in a very clean manner, in a very ethical manner. It cannot just be you cannot just say oops I forgot types, or I made a mistake in this report. So the internal controls ICFR framework has to be very, very strong for this. 404 again, the management assessment of internal controls. Then 409 real-time issuer disclosure. So see, the whole point is that in case there is a issue, how soon are you letting the general public know um, is a major issue, is a major requirement um, under SOX. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Sanjeev, I've seen your question. I'll just respond to you. Let me finish. I've been seeing your queries. Okay. So there is section 802. There is criminal penalties for altering document. This is again, if you look at the companies that got, that got affected by stocks, it's a very, very serious legislation. People actually go to jail and companies are shut down for that. So including auditors, okay, they have forced big audit companies to even be broken apart for conducting fraud audits. There have been companies, you can look it up. I don't want to take names of the big companies or the so-called wiggies in IT accounting who've got actually the biggest fines, also hundreds of millions of dollars for conducting uh, for conducting fraud audits. So again, there's a criminal penalties, and Section 906 of the SOX audit relates to the corporate responsibility for transparent financial reports. So by transparent financial reports, the definition is really very interesting. That it cannot just be like a block figure. It has to be, you have to show as to how we arrived at those calculations and how those profit after tax or expenses or whatever you are showing is actually um, hardcore, backed up with hardcore raw data also. That's where the transparency comes into place. Okay, so one good question has come up. Having experience in financial audit, tax audit, due diligence for M&A company, being a CF analyst and ISO so and so, want to be a SOX auditor. Can I be a SOX auditor after reading 66 pages, or is CISA mandatory? So see, typically speaking, you can become a SOX auditor. It depends, but the major onus will be on the company also who hires you. Typically, these large companies would want to go ahead with a company only, not with an individual, because individual you can't really hold liable. All those issues are there to a large extent, that too. So typically, they always go ahead with a company. And if you're in a company and that company is respectable, they put you for a SOX audit because you have the right response background in their opinion, then that could be a different story. But you going ahead and directly doing a SOX audit, first of all, that background would really matter. So that's what I would say. Now, oh man, somebody else has reported, could Satyam fraud be avoided if India had a law like SOX? Actually, I would say that India has good laws in place. The overall issue is of enforcement. That's what I would suggest. I can say India has a very good system in place. Only problem is, enforcement, the due penalties, the right people, and enough people going to jail without any intervention by the so-called higher ups. So that those things really matter more than the law itself. How well is the law implemented? Anyway, but we see that happening in the US, that people are sent to jail, companies are shut down. As you can see, Big Five became Big Four. All those things happen. Had Satyam happened in US, then the Big Four would have become then Big Three also, because one of those guys were involved over there of the Big Four now. So had Satyam happened in the US, then that Big Four would have become Big Three. So anyway, uh, even if you look at the ILF scam, it is phenomenal. So there is no point discussing hypothetical issues. Anyway, so coming to the next area, yeah, key sections covered. Okay, these are from the internal control. So as we saw earlier, sections 302, 401, 404, and 409. What we saw here, 302, 401, 404. 409. This becomes like the major crux of a SOX audit, and what are covered under that, we'll go into that. So there'll be internal controls. This is where the IT controls comes into place. Now look at the way it is worded over here, right? So corporate responsibility reporting, disclosures of financial public financial reports, management assessment of internal controls, real-time disclosures. But the controls under it are mostly from the IT perspective. So there is internal controls from IT, asset management, there is account activity management, network activity, user activity, database activity, information access, login activity, more from the monitoring and the reporting perspectives is also covered. So it is not just about just the money statements, financial statements and MISs. It's also about how IT is managed in our organization, that is covered. Uh, okay. Somebody has written about the structure of a SOX report, and I cannot really cover that over here. I'm sorry, maybe in the upcoming webinars. And somebody has said testing and approach remains the same as in ITGC. Yeah, of course, testing and approach for a SOX audit remains the same. Only the framework will change. So again, the SOX audit process, the risk assessment, the material analysis, materiality, that is, those controls are actually materially, required for your organization. The SOX control framework design, the fraud risk assessment that has to be done, then the documentation, testing of controls, deficiency assessment, and the final report comes into place. This is the overall SOX report audit process as we saw even earlier. Now, important points for the implementation of SOX compliance. So, in all our experience, you've seen a few areas, and these are the 9 items that you've identified, as weak areas. Like, for example, I was speaking to a client in the morning, and we are doing PCI DSS for them and major companies. So I told them, if I can think about two major requirements, I would say requirement three, which is storing, card data, card holder data in a secure manner, and section 10 or requirement 10, which speaks about monitoring and reporting, SIM, NTP, and all that comes under section 10. Most of the issues that we've seen at most of the clients is under section 3 and section 10 only. Not only, I would say, mostly they fall over there. More section 10 than section 3 rather. Anyway, so that is where we have put down the 9 basic uh, areas which should be included within the scope of a SOX compliance checklist when you're making one for organization. The number one is measures to prevent data tampering. It could be IT data, it could be a financial data. How are you able to show the integrity? So, you have to understand that SOX being a law, it basically tells you what is required to be done. How you do it, it is you up to you. Remember that. Like any law, it will tell you you have to do this, 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 and this. How you are supposed to be following those instructions, you have to define that control framework as per your environment. That's where the COSO framework comes into place, right? So then there is a process to establish the timelines for the audits or responding to breaches. Then verifiable controls to track the data access. So who accessed what data at what time, from where, all those things. The accountability has to be established. Now, this fourth point is very, very important on an ongoing basis. Like you've seen in major banks, where they have a team who are only managing the SOX operational compliance, so that it's not just a one time once a year activity. So ensure the effectiveness security measures operational, then report the effectiveness of security measures periodically. So it's up to you. You can do a half yearly audit, yearly audit, internal audit. For reporting in critical scenarios, we say at least a monthly or a quarterly reporting scenario has to be made within the organization at least. Then the process for detecting security breaches, then disclosing the security measures implemented to auditors, SOX auditors, in a very legitimate and precise manner. That is very important. You cannot assume that the SOX auditor, we've heard statements like, we are a big company, definitely we'll have something like this in place. So we hear that so many times, especially after giving the non-conformities. So the point is, as an auditor, I will be asking you, open-ended questions. Okay, how you're doing, for example, malware management, or how you're managing the vulnerability management life cycle, how you're doing that. So you have to tell me how you're doing it. You can't expect me that, okay, you would be having a system in place to keep track of all the patches, and of course, you'll have a process in place to check whether the patches that you're downloading are not corrupted and our integrity is retained. So, all those you cannot assume the auditor to understand. So, understand, not understand, the auditor will definitely understand if he's qualified, but to assume that you're doing it, right? Then disclosing security breaches to the SOX auditor. So one of the things that the SOX auditor is supposed to be reporting is the breaches that has happened, small, medium, large, whatever, as a part of his reporting. So you have to, in a very transparent manner, let the auditor know what sort of breaches has happened and what has been the learning and the closures and all those things. The the RCA, the root cause analysis that was done after the incident or the breach, all those things you have to highlight to the auditor. So why I'm saying this, because you have seen setups, good sensitive setups, saying that okay, for the past we asked them what happened last year, nothing happened. What happened that the year before at least? Oh no, we are all very safe. No incident in the past 5 years. And my simple question is, are you kidding me? So either you are lying, number one, or option two is that your controls are so weak that you're not able to detect breaches also. So all those points are there, because in a security breach, for example, the fourth last, detect security breaches, which is written over here, detect security breaches. So see, understand in this thing, uh, it is a breach doesn't just mean that you lost data or somebody took down your server. So that's an active breach. There is a different type of breach called as a passive breach also. So in a passive breach, your data is simply copied, or somebody is just sniffing data off your network. Nobody is taking down a server or destroying data or putting ransomware. So that is a passive breach. Passive breaches are much more effective than an active breach. So because they are quiet, you never know until your systems are so strong to detect an unauthorized presence in the network. So those things become much more difficult to guard also, and identify also, right? Okay. So next is disclose failures of security measures to SOX auditor. Same way. So we have seen places where we say, okay, has there been any virus outbreak or a ransomware, or somebody's laptop, the antivirus is not working, and we get answers, no, it's all fine, it's all fine, everything is managed centrally. It's not possible. You might have the best system on your network, but it's not necessary, and it's really not possible that for months and years on end there has been not a single system where the antivirus has failed or updates not pushed or no virus or no ransomware. It's simply not possible. So keep those things in check. Moving ahead, the SOX compliance checklist. These are the seven things that we ask. So review and monitor your access controls. The next thing, somebody had put in a question about automation also. So automation is definitely accepted to a very high level because then it shows, that the systems are very versatile and they can be relied upon also. Manual controls is not that it's prohibited, but showing that they are being done in a consistent manner will be very difficult for you. That is where we say get automation in place wherever possible. Then regularly test your controls quarterly, half yearly, yearly. Have a proper schedule done in place. Then the risk assessment, then the source of the risk identified, then document the control, and then finally assess the design. So these are the few things. Moving ahead after that, once you assess the design, documented the control, assess the design, then implement the policies and procedures. This is important for installing the updates. Now, we have seen systems where they say that we have got Windows Live update happening at all times, but then what about your MS Office? What about maybe if you're using VPN, then what about your VPN software updates? So all those things you have to define very clearly because many a time we see operating system level updates happening, but nothing else happening beyond that. Could be database updates, could be SSH updates, could be platform updates of Apache or Log4j or whatever be the case. Then establish the process for classifying sensitive data. Create the least privilege policy. This is again very, very important for SOX. Least privilege means on a need to know basis only. The question cannot be that, oh, he's been there for a long time. Oh, he's harmless as a kitten or she's harmless as a kitten. So nothing will happen. They know everything anyway. No, the criterion for giving access cannot be that, oh, what can the person do even if they have access? No, no, no. That's not the criterion. The criterion is on a need to know basis only. They can see it only if they need to know it. So monitor and tracking of user behavior that define policies and procedures for breach notification. This thing is there across the board. If you look at most of these requirements, it's across the board. Whether it is SOC 1, SOC 2, GDPR, HIPAA, all these things are across the board. Then finally document the processes and procedures for all these controls that we discussed up over there. Most important, once you've documented the processes and procedures, very important to train your staff and keep records of it. Very important, right? So you can have the best policies, procedures, and whatever documentation data that you can show, but if you do not have it in you to show that your people were also adequately trained and also maintain and document data of past events, not just for that time, and retain it over a period of time. Then define the process to prevent data loss, and finally maintain a SOX compliance status report. Now, what do I mean by that? This is hear me carefully on this. Many companies, what they do is that they might be having say 200 controls in SOX in their SOX, or 400 or 500, depending on what they want to do and what they have identified as their control framework under SOX. So they might say that these are very critical controls to be done quarterly. These are critical to be done say half yearly. These are low importance. They'll be going in the yearly audit framework. So, and there could be some that is being done on a daily basis also. It could be say review of your log reports, review of your integrity reports, review of your batch records, review of your backup reports. So SOX compliance report is like a very detailed sheet of what all our activities are to be tested and reviewed, how often and when and by whom, and whether that has been done on a consistent basis. Then finally comes preparing for the SOX audit. Now this is an expensive process, right? It is not something that will be done in a cheap way. It really takes a lot of time because understand it, penalties are up to 20 years in jail and $5 million in fine for executives filing a false or misleading report.
right? So the penalties are very high. Okay, more than the $5 million, it's a 20 years in jail, right? So, so it is not something to be fooled around with, to be played around with. And there is, of course, there are definitely more benefits for achieving SOX compliance that goes way beyond meeting the just the legal requirements, because it really makes your systems very resilient and very measurable, as I can say that, right? So, and as you start, choose the right framework, how you are going to do, what all controls are applicable, not applicable, how will they be tested, the testing procedures. Then notify the audit team. Once the team is notified, the date comes, so then inform the business and the key stakeholders. Ensure you sign an NDA before the kickoff meeting with the auditors. Very important that the auditor might take an exception if you're sharing information without an NDA in place. Then agree on the scope and methodology of the audit. Then focus on the people, process, and technology, not just the technology and not just only the people. It is PPT, as I always say, people, process, and technology. Then investigate any sort of discrepancy as you're preparing, so that there are no unpleasant surprises, no unpleasant surprises at all. So investigate any sort of discrepancies, determine and implement controls that are there in place, determine and implement the controls which are you have documented as a part of your control framework, establish a governance framework or a structure in place. Again, with people, process, and technology, that who's going to manage the data or the scope which is there in your SOX. So who's going to manage the entire data sets, not just the compliance, but even the operational data sets. And then finally, the SOX document set, that is managing, developing, and updating on a regular basis. And last but not the least is the continuous improvement in your processes, that you have to document and show to your auditors that, okay, last year you were here and this year we implemented some new controls, or we made this more precise, or you added something new. Now, a few key takeaways, common SOX readiness pitfalls to avoid. Ineffective risk assessment and scoping, always the number one. The risk assessment, I don't know who does it. Even yesterday, I was watching it for a large organization. I don't know what people think when they're doing a risk assessment. They are not even clear on the definition of a vulnerability and a threat, and having a justification for the likelihood and the impact. Just to reduce the risk levels, they'll write anything. And the next thing is what I've been saying from the beginning. That is excluding people outside of the finance department and the accounting department, because many times people feel this just as a part of the finance audit, and then failing to coordinate with the external auditors, letting them know in advance what challenges, who's the contact person, and how it is to be done. Not having the appropriate skills and experiences from both sides. The one who is managing the SOX audit internal to the organization, and even external, the auditor who's coming. What if he or she doesn't have appropriate skills and experiences? Then the untimely and the unplanned schedule changes. Oh, we can't do the audit today, let's do it next week. Or let us plan one now and the second half in the second month. Something like that. Then there is an inconsistent working process. So within the organization, there has to be a team who's, I wouldn't say dedicated, but who's responsible for SOX, and who will be doing what has to be clearly identified. And that cannot be. Typically, we have seen that people who are taken into confidence and people who are given the responsibilities are those people who have nothing else to do, who are sitting free. That cannot be the way. Then you put monkeys and you get a circus. So that's where it is very important to get the right people in place, so that there is consistency. Hello, I hope my voice is audible. If you are facing any trouble, please do message me. Yeah, thank you, because I got a couple of messages that unable to hear. Okay, thank you again. I just got a bit worried. So much I spoke and audio is not clear. Okay. Thank you so much for the confirmation. So moving ahead, so inconsistent work process and the lack of effective communication internally. See, typically these are large companies, and large companies there may be 10 departments, but in that departments there will be 15, 20, 30, 40 processes. Each process not knowing what the other one is doing. So we have seen this happen so many times, and in that handoff, handover from one team to the next, there are assumptions, and people miss critical areas because they feel somebody else is doing, somebody else feels somebody else knows, somebody else feels somebody else knows. In the end, nobody knows. We see this happening so many times, especially in large enterprises. Then the practical approach and path towards compliance, it requires a good amount of time and effort, even if you have been doing it consistently over the years, because you have to even show that how you have improved over a period of time. So this requires assigning new roles and responsibilities for risk management selection. So you have to ensure that the right people are in place. Not just the people who are sitting idle. This you've seen a problem happening in many companies. But it looks also very unsurmountable because we've had clients where they've implemented more than 1,000 requirements also, 600, 700 requirements also. So because they broke down the COSO framework in that mannerism. So my advice to you is don't get overwhelmed. Like how we manage large audits, like with SOC 2 we are doing for the companies where they're asking us to do 4 5 standards in one go. So we got multiple clients where you're doing, you'll not believe this, SOC 2, GDPR, HIPAA, PCI, ISO, all these things happening at one client at one go. So, but breaking them down into phases will make it more manageable because there is a lot of overlaps and overlaps between these standards also. Okay. And now, practical approach and part towards compliance. Now, it requires to take a very practical approach. You need to have somebody who's experienced. You need to have somebody experienced in managing audits also, because you have seen people who are very tech friendly or very sound in an academic and technical manner but not able to manage projects, and especially in the scale of a project like SOX, you need very efficient project management and people who are aware of the of the audit process, even though they might not be very much subject matter experts. And very important, as I said, last but not the least, is hire an external auditor, and hire the external auditor much in advance, not just before the audit, but even when the audit is about to start, much before the audit. Sorry, not just at the time of the audit that you hire the auditor, but much in advance, so that the entire process is also reviewed multiple times by the auditor, and you don't get a very unpleasant surprise towards the end of it. So I really hope that made sense. So as we close, a few points to keep in mind for SOX compliance. Very important, the CEO CFO knows they are there driving the project, and they are there reviewing the project and breaking any sort of issues that is happening in between. Now ensuring that the financial records are public as per the financial regulation, and then the quarterly and the annual reports are accurate, because this really matters a lot under SOX. And keep track of the internal controls, both physical and electronic. That's where the IT comes into place, and this is a very important part of the audit process. So I really hope that made sense, and I went slightly over time. I'm sorry, but thank you still for being there. Almost everyone is still there, so thank you so much for being there, and thank you for sharing your time. And as we are ending, gentle reminder of the survey: please do share your valuable feedback. Your opinion is extremely important to us. And again, that's our Facebook page, and then we are there on LinkedIn. We have our own company page, and various service pages are there. We post, our team post contents almost every day. So be there, follow our Facebook page, follow our LinkedIn page, and this will really help you out. And again, that's a LinkedIn, that's a YouTube page also. We are probably the most visited page for compliance on the net. So do be there. There's tons of content, hundreds of videos on compliance, everything for free. Do subscribe and click on the bell icon so you get notified. And that's our contact us page with our details for reaching out to us. Do drop in a line to reach out to us if there is something that we can work out with you, or in case you have any further queries. So thank you again for being there. And on that note, I end. Have a wonderful, wonderful day ahead. I'll see you next month with a new subject. Take care and God bless. Bye bye.